session. My name's Steve Stinson. I look after transformation program for Velenetic.
I'm Teresa Jennings. I'm the Operations Director of Velenetic.
Alvaro Montenegro, Products and Technology Director, Velenetic.
So the agenda for the Q&A is we're going to run through just 2 or 3 slides. Those slides are all going to be focused around customer views. Really want to get your opinions, whether it's in this session or after this session, about whether we're on the right lines. What we're looking to do is pull a pack of 10 to 20 slides together that's all focused on customer views. So we're about 10 or 12 slides into that in a minute. We're working with the associations as well. But really what we're keen to do is make sure that the things that we're creating are things that you're interested in. And obviously, you know, if we're off the mark, it would be really good to kind of get your feedback as to the things that you're really keen to see from a customer view. So I'm going to run you through just 2 or 3 slides. It won't be very long, and then we'll open up to general Q&A. Okay, so we'll start off with this slide. So this is something that Teresa shared in the main plenary. So what we're trying to show here is we're trying to look at each stage of cutover and be able to say, either from a broker perspective or from a carrier perspective, what you're going to be able to do during those periods. We tried to make it as user-friendly as we can. I think, to be fair, this is probably the most user-friendly slide I've got to show you, so I'll apologise for going forward. But yeah, so what we're trying to show now is, like, okay, for submissions block, what's available. This ties very much into what Teresa was saying on the claims side. The in-flight and the whip work that we've been looking at here is what happens in claims, and what we think is really good news, that, you know, for claims, you're going to continue to be able to submit claims right up until the last day of the submissions block. Premium, nothing changes for it, but we're trying to show it in a visual way for you on this. We've also done a carrier view, which is a little bit smaller, but we tried to capture the main areas. But again, if we're missing anything, please just reach out and let us know. Then again, I apologise for this one. It's a very detailed slide. It's not great on the screen, but it will look better in the addendum that we're going to do on the cutover plan. So what we're trying to show here is what systems are available to you and what systems aren't available to you through each stage of cutover. And as you can see, so we start off with the submissions block, where everything is available. As we move into the technical cutover, then there are no systems available, and we've kind of, as you can see, we've listed below. And then we move into the controlled launch and the DPS available, where it comes more about what services are available, but also more importantly, or just as importantly, it's the systems that won't be available after that time. So again, we'll be sharing this, publishing this, where you can have a look, and with the hope of really just driving some conversations with you and any questions that you have moving forward. What we're also trying to show is, again, this is a slightly better one on the screen than the previous one, but what we're trying to show is customer journeys here. So what we're doing here is splitting into premiums and claims primarily, and we're trying to show you the different paths and routes that we can take. So ranging from the very straightforward, an original premium gets submitted and then it gets agreed during the submissions block before it goes into the technical cutover. But we're also trying to show you as well what happens if it's, you know, not quite so straightforward and the premium gets queried and it doesn't get resolved in time, so the premium has to be rejected and resubmitted. So we're doing this from a premium side of it, as you can see on the screen, and we're also showing you from a claims journey as well. The claims journey is always a little bit more complex than the premium side. I think we're around about 6 to 8 slides of this that we've built of different scenarios so far. We're just showing you 2 here today. So this is the final slide to show of the types of things that we're going to show to you. But as I say, what I'd really ask and ask from us to yourselves is, please work with either the associations or your engagement partners to say, look, if I wanted a customer view pack, this is what I'm interested in seeing. These are the types of things I'd like you to include. Because if you can get that information through to us in the next, 4 to 8 weeks, we'll do our level best to make sure that those types of slides are included in the deck that we add on to the cutover plan. So I'm just going to go backwards to that slide. It's a little bit more user-friendly on the eye. And there's no more slides to show you on that side of things, but now it's really a case for us to answer any questions that you might have. And can I just say a couple of things? When you ask a question, could you say who you are, what organisation you work for? I'm told you have to hold the microphone really close as well, otherwise it doesn't pick it up. So, but yeah, any questions? This will be the first session with no questions.
It's the last session, so.
It's the last session of the day.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Pierre and Jim from Velenetic, coincidentally. Could you help us draw the distinction between data copy and data migration? I know that question came up in other sessions, please.
Yeah, sounds good. So it's the same thing. It's a slightly more accurate legal term. So before you have seen data migration in the slide packs, and I think that we presented data migration in the previous events. Now all the slides are updated with the data copy. It's the same thing. So basically we are copying data from the mainframe to the cloud. So none of the principles change. The only reason for the change is that it's a more accurate legal term. We are not burning the mainframe down and using only the cloud. It's just a copy from one to the other. So that's why you can see data copy everywhere. But if you have previous slides or previous communication and it mentions data migration, it's the same thing. There's no major differences. Again, it's a more accurate legal term.
Hi, Richard Gardner from Arch. Question for Alvaro. On the data copy, you mentioned there was going to be an initial copy taken and then subsequent iterations. Are those iterations going to be just the delta between what was originally done and what's in live systems now, or is it a complete recut or recopy?
It's just the delta. So as you said it perfectly well, the short answer is yes. Let's say that we have, I forgot how much we have, it's 100 and something petabytes, I forgot. So we have 100 terabytes, let's call it. On the first tranche would be 20, then the next one will be 10, and then the tools that you saw on the slide that we presented on the plenary event, it's called change data capture and click replicate. Those tools, actually what they do is that they detect changes and they only copy the change. So for example, you had a table with 10,000 rows. A month later, you have 12,000 rows. Well, it detects those 2,000 rows, and that's what we copy. And then the next month, what we're trying to do is two things. We are reducing the amount of data copying at the end, because of course we have, I don't know how many years of market data in our mainframe applications today and databases. So we're reducing the amount of copy in the final days of cutover. It's just the final delta. And then the second bit is that we can assure things in a very long term. We don't have to assure thousands and thousands of documents and thousands of claims and thousands of premiums and treaties and binders and everything on the last day. We can do that from October, in September, in August. We can do it in trenches. And if we find any defects or any issues, we can address those issues in time for cutover. So let's say that one of the tools is not working properly and some of the claim tables are not being copied correctly, and we found 3 or 5 issues, then we can address those, copy again, and then see if that way we're not leaving everything to the end. So that's the main reason. Short answer, yes.
Thank you. Just one follow-up. So the assurance, the reconciliations that you mentioned in the session earlier, will they be done over the whole data set again once the iterations are done?
Yes. So it would be, all the reports will be done at each interim data copy stage. So the first one is planned for summer, so July, August. Then the next one most likely is going to be a month afterwards, and so over. And in each dress rehearsal, we'll do an extra trench. So each of those copy instances or iterations would produce a set of reports. Those will go to PwC, to customers, and then there will be a final one that just wraps up everything.
Thank you.
Hi, Pete Robinson, Talbot. My question relates to reachback and testing of that. Your theory of using data that's 5 years old, who have you explored that with to see whether that hypothesis will actually work?
So it's complex. So we have, that's a solution that we came together with Limos. So Limos manages TSD, that is one of our mainframe test environments that has the most amount of market testing data. is the mainframe test environment that we have used for previous market acceptance testing, right back AutoRI, Part 7 in the past, so the accounts as well. So there's a ton of data there. So the way that we're planning to use is TSD as a source of test historic data that would be copied over to the cloud, and that can be used to test reachback and to test the process of copying as well. There is a few complexities on using TSD. The main complexity is the party mapping or party matching. Because of course, 3 years ago, Donald Duck put a claim against Pluto, and then those parties don't exist in the new environment. So we have to map them and match them, because of course, when you're using reachback, one of the first things that we check is that if this party can come and fetch this record. And if you're not Donald Duck in the new DPS, then of course you cannot come and fetch it. So party mapping is something that we're solving. The last piece of the puzzle, and that's why we think it's feasible, that even though, let's say that we have, I'll put a practical example. Let's say that during customer testing, we want to test a business scenario of a treaty FDO that was in the mainframe, and we want to put a large loss on day one of that treaty contract. We go into the TSD, we search, and there are no FDOs, treaty FDOs, that match what we want to test in our business scenario. What we can do, and we have discussed this with Limos, is that our testers or Limos testers can come into TSD, create the FDO, put the dates, put the parameters that they need for the test, create that in the mainframe, then we copy over, and then it's used as a reachback. So we can also create new historic data, let's call it that way. So that's the third option for those that we cannot find, because as you say, we are at the mercy of whatever we have tested in the past. That's our base at the moment in mainframe test environment, correct?
And how old is that data again? When's the data cut?
Ooh, I don't know
Because
how far away does TSD go. Louise, you might know?
It's not lots of historic data.
It's
got about
6 years?
Certainly the data center migration stuff we did.
Yeah, so at least 2.5 years. Yeah, at least 2.5 years of market acceptance testing data.
So have you validated that with the vendors, that if we use that data, that their applications are going to still be able to function of data that's over 2 years old?
We have not validated that with the vendors. We have communicated to the vendors that that's the plan for reachback testing. However, the impact on the vendors should not be, so for example, we have discussed with VRisk, for example, I'll put it as a practical example, on how a new claim movement on an old claim would work. So what are the things that you need to match to use reachback? Well, you need the same UMR that was used in TSD, you need the same UCR, and you need the same parties. So that's what you need in order to do a subsequent claim to get into historic. Those will be the input parameters of the test for that vendor. It doesn't matter if we did it with Limos or if we have historic or if we had to create it, but those are the input parameters of this test, because vendors are not creating new data in the TSD. I don't know if I understood your question correctly. Does that answer, Pete?
So it's just for our own test environment and also for our downstream data warehouse testing as well, to get it through a whole end-to-end cycle from our PAS into our data warehouse.
Yeah.
We can set up in the TSD environment. When we've used TSD in the past, what we do is we'll set up with whoever's doing the testing in CCT, will be asked if there's any data that they need to have set up in the TSD environment to match back then to what they've got in their own downstream systems to make sure the data passes through. That's normal practice, so it will be catered for. It's
so
just we've got some data.
Someone's going to enter all of that data, are they?
If there's some that we can use, we'll reuse it. If there's no data existing, it will have to be created. That's always the case when we do market testing.
Yeah.
So we'd have to go and search for those risks that we actually want that's 5 years old that match a certain criteria.
You can't use live data.
The data that's in the test
TSD,
environment?
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you'll have to create it.
Thanks. If you want to come up, Luis, yeah, you're welcome.
Louise.
You're welcome to the dream team.
Just to follow up on that question, actually, because it's something that I've been sort of thinking about a lot, as well as how we prepare on the data side. Can we get visibility of what relates to specific firms that's in that historic anonymized data?
To specific what? Sorry, I didn't.
Firms, organisations.
Ah,
If your firm has been involved in market acceptance testing before, there might well be some data that's already on the database in the TSD environment that you can use. If you've never been involved in market testing before, then you will have to set your data up.
So do we have to then just identify the historical scenarios that we want to test and create a data set that's relevant to that?
Yeah, the reason, I probably should come.
Come on, Louise.
The reason that Limos are doing the testing in the way they are with specific scenarios for different organisations is to make sure that you don't have to set up all the data for every single test. So this is why some of the recent things about some companies, managing agents want to do a lot more testing than they've been allocated in the MAT. That's why, because you'll have to set all those tests up if you want to do them.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, no, it's okay. Thanks, Luis.
So, thanks, Louise. I think we're aware of that and the way that the test's been allocated out. It's just actually getting a handle on what data we need to set up. So for new, that's easy, right? Because that will be part of the scenario. But it's just on terms of that historical stuff. I'd like to be ready before we're asked to do it, I suppose, in terms of so making sure that we have guidance in terms of what we actually need to set up for that.
I think that the best starting point is that if you are either allocated to test reachback in Limos or in Vanguard and you're planning to test reachback, to start knowing exactly which reachback scenarios you want to test. So I want to test a subsequent claim on a claim that was agreed or queried. Do I want to test additional premium or SIMRIP, so a reinstatement and claim simultaneous? Do I want to test binders that had a contract? So which scenarios you want and what parameters those scenarios. That way, that makes the shopping list of what needs to be there for reachback, right? So again, like my case there in a treaty that has a large loss on day one of setting up the FDO, that means that you need to have an FDO set up in the TSD environment so you can test a large loss on day one that reaches back to that one. So it depends on how large the scope of reachback testing is for you. Maybe as a customer, you're not testing reachback at all because other parts of your Vanguard or Limos are testing reachback and you're counting on their assurance.
Okay, I think I've got it. So we basically set it up as if it's a new, but it's just set up in a different environment, right? That data. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Anthony Freeman, DocuSoft. In the cutover plan, it talked about more work to be done on in-flight claims. Has that been resolved yet? So are queries going to come through? Or
So, do you want me to say that?
Yeah.
So I think we've finished the work on in-flight claims with the exception of 4 scenarios, which is laws, prop treaty, statics, and
SCAP.
a SCAP. So and that's just literally because we've not got to those yet. So we've covered everything else and gone to the lowest depth possible that we can do on those to say we're confident that we can do that processing during the submissions block. Those last 4 are what we're looking at over the next 2 weeks. So we've literally got workshops within Belenetic over the next 2 weeks on each of those 4 instances, and we're looking to finish those off. We didn't get to them in time for this event. There's not because they're particularly more worrisome than anything else. We just didn't get those workshops done. So next couple of weeks we expect to get that finalised.
and with VCS being removed as functionality, has that been looked at in terms of what happens to in-flight VCS claims?
Do you want to put that one up, Alvaro?
Well, you can if you want to, but I don't think we've got an answer yet on the. Well, I'm not aware of the
No.
answer on the VCS.
Yeah.
So that wasn't specifically mentioned, but that is on our list as well.
Okay.
on the pending.
We've got 5 minutes left, so I think I've time for a couple more.
Just quick follow-up. If you've got a reinstatement premium, for example, and you've submitted a claim in that submission block, but you don't have access to certain things with the premium, will you be able to still process that reinstatement premium off the back of that claim?
So that's a good one here. So for example, even though you can submit a claim as a broker, but because you cannot submit premium, including reinstatement premiums, that means that SIMRIPs would be on the block side. You cannot submit a SIMRIP, a simultaneous reinstatement premium plus claim at the same time. So yeah, that's a good shout. I think we can put it in the maybe in the slides as a sub case of it.
Yeah, good call.
So you probably just need a very clear view of what the scenarios are that you kind of.
Yeah, because you can submit a reinstatement premium that's not related to a claim. I know that those are rare, but you can. You can submit a claim that it's not related to a reinstatement premium.
And that's why we ask for the feedback, really, because, you know, sometimes when you're so close to this, you take things for granted. So if there are other things like that you think will be really helpful to have on there. We had a little bit of feedback earlier on, I think, on one of the slide where we give you the system application, what's available, what's not available. It says on there that write-back isn't available after DPS, and actually it absolutely
Write-back
is.
messaging is available.
Yeah, so it's just given a little bit of clarity in terms of saying exactly what's going on there. So we're really close to it. So sometimes you just need someone else to just say, actually, I know you know it, and we know it, but could you write it down? So thank you for that.
I think we've got time probably for a couple more. What's on there?
Thanks. Richard Peart from CityNet. Hopefully these are quite simple questions, but have you got time of the month when you expect the technical cutover to happen and the submission block for premiums to happen? And also, what happens to settlement due dates that fall between that submission block?
So we don't, as we talked about in the main plenary session, there's no date yet. But
is there a time of the month that you expect it to happen rather than like month end or?
yeah, so well, we'll probably follow the same logic that we've used before. So we know, for example, that Mondays tend to have bank holidays for certain currencies, so you can limit the interruption in the market. So we now know, for example, when we want to do the technical cutover, that we would go we'd go Saturday, Sunday, Monday as the service blackout day, because then you've reduced the impact. So we've learned that, we know that now, so we'd be looking to put that in place rather than Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We also know that because of that sort of shifted everything round one day. We do know that we need to avoid call trends. We've known that previously. We've learned that from the data center migration when we were doing our investigation there. So we would avoid call trend. We'd avoid ideally the first week of following a month end, because that's a really busy time for getting all the reporting out and people want to close their month down, and so we learnt that as well. So we'd probably, and depending on when we go, I mean, you know, we'll probably kind of stick with the approach that we've taken previously, but caveat, it really does depend on what that date is. In terms of settlement due days, it won't change. So if you've got a settlement due date that's due to fall in that cutover period where we're not settling, and there's only, you know, one day when we're not actually settling. So if your settlement due date was due to fall on that day that we then make a non-settlement day, it will get moved on. Okay.
Now, 1 minute. I think we've got time for one more question.
Hi, Terry Kelly. In relation to laws, it seems to be a mythical art out there somewhere that nobody knows what it does, how it works. I know Exchanging have always kind of confessed to that as well, so I could imagine it's quite difficult to build. I guess just a suggestion, similar to what you've done with the controlled testing for Vanguard, is can I suggest that you take a handful of people and disappear into a dark room before you get the rest of Vanguard kind of involved, just for your own sanity as well, but break it between a handful of people rather than kind of on a daily, every other day basis kind of things that aren't working, I guess. So just a suggestion more than
That's good
anything.
feedback.
Yeah, definitely, that's good feedback, especially that we don't, Velonetic, we don't have an active role in LORS. So there's no way of correcting, sometimes in claims or in premiums, we can correct things ourselves. We can mop up anything that, fell through the cracks. That in LORS is a completely automated broker carrier system, so.
And how is that progressing, by the way? Sorry.
So laws is in our, remember I mentioned about list of 4, that's actually list of 5 now with the volume claims. It's one of our 5/5. It's gone up to 5 now.
Well, that's great feedback. Thank you. We'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
I'm going
We
to hand over
appreciate it.
to Bob now to close our session. Thank you, Bob. Dance.
First, I only have 3 things, because long days. Thank you for being here. First one is thank you for being here. Secondly is we are going to produce a new plan, a new milestone plan that is focused not just on testing, but as I said in the bigger session, a big piece of that will be testing. It'll also be focused on some of the conversations in the breakout sessions, the cutover, the rollback, the data copy, the governance piece. But if we don't get testing right, as you can see by the fact that we had to change the date, then the rest of it becomes a moot point. So we are in the middle of that. I don't know if that's going to take us 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get it done, but we're not going to release it until we're ready. And in that regard, we're going to make sure that it's not just Velonetic having to carry this load. As you know, the business is owned by 3 shareholders, so it's my intent to make sure that all 3 shareholders, the IUA, DXE, and Lloyd's, are alongside Velonetic, understand the plan, agree with the plan, understand where the weaknesses are, so that we can help Velonetic not sit on the sidelines and critique the rugby team as it goes down the pitch, but actually be along to help. So we will be coming out with that. The third thing, and in hindsight, I don't know, Sheila's not in the room, but in hindsight, we should have taken her advice from the LMA, because when we published the October date, you'll remember well, you might not remember, I remember because I wrote the doggone article, we said target date. We should have just said target date without putting October in. And so, lesson learned, I probably owe Sheila one of many dinners for giving me that advice that unfortunately I did not take. But we are going to de-link this work plan from the cutover. So don't, I mean, you can obviously ask us anytime you want to about when's the cutover going to happen, but I'm not going to announce even a tentative date for the cutover until I know that the work plan's been completed. Because we then need to then actually plan for the cutover itself, which, as you've heard, is a separate exercise that will require some work. And we need to be mindful, as you heard said several times today, of what else is going on in the marketplace. Hopefully it's not a hurricane, but you never know what's going to happen when you plan a cutover. It may not just be year-end financials. It may not just be 1/1 renewals. It may not just be month-end close, quarter-end close. It may be something else. So we are going to de-link it. And I guess the last thing I'd say is, because for many of you, and maybe I'm talking to myself and not talking to you, got people that are working really hard, and this is a long journey. However, it is, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, and the fact that we're running on a 30-year-old platform, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long of a journey, and it's a long time that we upgraded this platform. We don't talk about it too much, but the platform we're on, although it runs every single day, it's a bit brittle. It's hard to change, and it's doggone near time that we upgrade it. And even though we haven't spent any time today that I'm aware of talking about phase 2, we can't get to phase 2 until we get to phase 1, and so the unlocking all of this is required in this. So for causing you some angst around the date change in terms of your own resource planning, I'll just take it for myself. I apologize for that. Thank you for being here, and most importantly, thank you for your support. We will get there. We will get there. I sent a note out over the weekend. I think it was over the weekend. I sent so many notes out, who knows. It's an American football analogy, so forgive me for American football, but that's where I came from. There's 100 yards to get to goal. Oftentimes, it's the last 10 yards that are hardest to get to. we're somewhere around 10 to go, 15 to go, and we just need to hang in there. So thank you for hanging in there with us, and I think we have some beverage of your choice outside, and have a great night. Thanks.